Titans vision, Titans vision, Titans vision, Titans vision.
Turn it off. It's annoying.
No, don't listen to him. He just, he's a hater. He is brother blood after all. But no, really, guys, welcome to my Titans Season 4, Episode 8 recap, review, and breakdown. This episode is called Cole's Folly, and if you haven't watched WandaVision, then you probably have no idea what that intro was about, but it definitely did give some WandaVision vibes. Now, this episode still provided for quite an entertaining time with the Titans. We had quite a few developments in various areas. Yes, I'm looking at you, DickKory fans. But I'm going to stop rambling, even though I'm probably going to ramble for the rest of this video. Go ahead and like the video if you do enjoy this recap, review, and breakdown. And maybe if you're brand new here and you want to stay up to date with breakdowns just like this on all kinds of shows and movies and news and stuff like that, I would always appreciate a subscribe as well. Right at the beginning, we have Dick and Kory wake up in bed together. They put together that the milkshakes they had were drugged, and they were questioning if anything had happened between them in the bedroom, and I definitely loved that. This episode really cooked along these two and their romance, which we knew we were getting this season very, very nicely. Sure, like this intro bit was a bit of a joke, if you will, but when it comes to the more serious and more smooth transition into how their feelings come to the surface, that was handled quite well, I think. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So Dick and Kory find out that they're actually Ted and Carol, and this is what I mean by the WandaVision vibes, because if you didn't know already, in WandaVision we have Wanda create this kind of somewhat pocket reality, if you will, similar to Cole's Folly. I guess it's kind of a pocket dimension infused with dark magic or whatever, and everyone in there, similar to this episode, is kind of just a brainwashed drone. And speaking of the very culty ways, this is when we cut to the church in Cole's Folly, and we have May speaking about how everyone here is rose to the occasion. They've guarded the horn for her and her son. Now Sebastian walks into roaring applause. He talks a bit about his life, how he's always wanted a family, someone to protect him from the world, from himself, but he never felt as though he belonged until he came here. He finally knows who he's supposed to be. This obviously ties back into the, flashbacks we even had of Sebastian in part 1, and ever since he's been recognized as this somewhat messiah for the Church of Blood cult, a lot of this is going to his head, and he's liking the admiration. His ego is starting to come out a bit more, and we're going to see that ego get blown and blown and blown up, but this all begins with him retrieving the horn. After all, this is why everyone is in Cole's Folly this episode. So he puts his hand in the little freaking lava bowl, and then he pulls out the horn, and of course the next step after this would be to sound the horn. So stakes are getting very, very high, because at this point it seems like the Church of Blood, what more really do they have to do to bring Trigon back? And that's not much, but this next moment kind of made me giggle a little bit, because we do have May Bennett talking about the girl who came here yesterday, the one they call Raven, the one who claims to be the daughter of Trigon. We instantly have this lady who's been like, kill the heretic. And I just felt like, it's a little bit cheesy, but at the same time, these are like crazy cult members, so I guess what do you expect? I mean, I don't have any experience in this stuff, but I suppose they would act like this. But if you've watched my episode 7 review, or even my no spoilers review, as I said, these first 2 episodes are kind of the big Sebastian push. So now that he has the horn, things are very much so neatly cooking along there. I really enjoyed Joseph Morgan's performance here. He really does give it his all, even in just a simple scene like this of just basically, it's kind of like pulling out a freaking cereal toy from a cereal box and just being like, "Ree!" But he still manages to make that very compelling. And as I raved about in my episode 7 review right at the beginning, when Sebastian was coming out of the blood pit, I really like the score that they give to Sebastian. And here, I feel like the whole mood of the scene is really elevated to new heights because of just how badass they make all of this sinister, diabolical music. So this is when the sheriff spots a bunch of ravens flying in the sky, so he decides to follow them, and that leads him to Raven. And meanwhile, with Sebastian, they hear about the sheriff locating Raven, and this is where a little bit of beef happens between him and Mother Mayhem. He really wants to see Raven. He feels like she's his last weakness. He needs to sever ties through killing her, but she's saying no to Sebastian, so this turns into a little bit of, who are you to tell me what I can and can't do? You don't know me. So as you guys can tell, especially with the next scene when Sebastian goes to Raven, seeds are being planted between Sebastian and Mother Mayhem of a little bit of doubt. Like, okay, what if she is just using me to bring back Trigon? Because we do have Raven saying, your mother used you just like mine did to get closer to him. So this is where a whole bunch of conflict starts happening, even amongst him and Raven, because he does cut her and then it wounds him, so he can't really kill her without killing himself. But I do really like the remnants of the old Sebastian being there as well, all of this insecurity just flooding him, because it means if he can't really feel truly united with Mother Mayhem, the kind of new family that he was just talking about in the church that he's now found, and he's obviously gone a bit too far to be united with Raven, it just kind of leads to a recipe for disaster. And I like how all of this is fleshing out in the episode. Again, with the Star Wars analogy, it may be a bit weird, but I do take the whole Sebastian journey, especially with me mentioning how you do see slithers of Sebastian's conflict there, as a bit similar to Anakin Skywalker's. Even when he was going down the dark path, he was like crying at points. He was very conflicted, but obviously with the dark side's influence, he kept going down that road. So it's a very similar thing with Sebastian here. Every single step he seems to take, it just compounds in the frustration, the anger, and the further corruption he just keeps getting himself into. So up next, we then see May Bennett say, well, my son can't harm Raven, but you guys certainly can. Obviously, Raven can't escape, even though she's in restraints right now, because her powers don't work in Cole's Folly. So even with White Raven mode, she is completely like power inhibited. She's got like the equivalent of metahuman cuffs on, so she can't really do anything to escape. Meanwhile, with Dick and Kory, or should I say Carol and Ted, because they're most certainly in Carol and Ted mode, because they're wearing the kind of clothes that fit in with the town, hence the WandaVision vibes here. They have to play along and blend in the diner. We have this cult lady say that they're looking for the heretic, kill the girl, and celebrate Trigon's coming, so Dick and Kory are kind of freaking out at this point. They really want to find Raven, and this is when we have Megan, the waitress, slip them a note. Dick and Kory go outside, and this is when Dick gets the drop on her dad, and they reveal that they brought Raven to the barn. It's just that we kind of left her there, and the sheriff took her, so sorry about that. So in the meantime, we have Dick and Kory getting filled in. First you forget who you are, where you are, and after a couple of hours or so, you won't exist anymore. And I thought that was quite a cool premise this episode, because time is of the essence. Not only are stakes high because obviously Sebastian and Mother Mayhem have the horn now, but they can risk losing themselves, quite literally their identity. Raven's life is in danger, and just shit really seems to be hitting the fan. Dick and Kory learn that Sebastian and Mother Mayhem have already got the horn, so that's not great news. So now they just kind of need to focus on getting the hell out of here, getting Raven, and stopping Mother Mayhem and Sebastian. But meanwhile, with Tim and Bernard, they locate Starfire's geomagnetic pulse, I believe it was, because she kind of emits these, it's kind of like solar flares, as Bernard describes it. And this is when they go to the radio station and they're reading traces of Kory, but I believe it does stop when she actually goes full-on brainwashed. Now, did this set remind anyone? I could be wrong here, but I feel like this is the same set, or at least it felt familiar, of when Dick Grayson blew that kind of kryptonite dust into Superboy's face. Now, this is when they find a guy called William, who actually turns out to be Megan's brother, sitting there with a radio, and he's just been waiting for them to come back this whole entire time, because I believe this town, Cole's Folly, I think went up in flames or something 10 years ago, but he's just been waiting here every single freaking day, because he can kind of feel that they're still around here, which introduces a little bit of a plot between Tim and Bernard this episode, where they disagree on approaches. Bernard is a very data-oriented science guy, and Tim also feels the connection between him and the Titans, so he agrees with William, and he's like, well, no, I can feel something here. There's definitely something more going on. And so when we get back to Dick and Kory, Dick comes up with a backup plan that I really liked, in how if they're going to try and save Raven, they have the risk of losing themselves. So he comes up with the idea of recording some memories, very painful memories, into a tape recorder. And initially, Kory really really doesn't like this idea, but I found it to be quite an interesting, yes, Batman way of getting back to themselves, because he does mention that Bruce trained him for this kind of mind-watching thing just in case him and Constantine ever had a row. So once again, another Constantine reference. We had Constantine referenced a bunch of times from Jinx earlier on in part 1. Now, Bruce taught Dick this because one of Bruce Wayne's biggest fears is, of course, losing his identity, his mission for being Batman. So if Dick and Kory also do a similar thing here, maybe it could come in handy, which it does. And I think the DickKory fans will be absolutely loving this one because, of course, initially, Dick Grayson goes over the painful memories of the Flying Graysons, losing his parents, then he was adopted by Bruce Wayne. Kory then goes over what happened with her grandfather when he died, but the main thing here being when she thought she lost Dick. Sometimes you don't know how you feel about someone until they're gone, and we have like a really cool full circle moment with this later, because initially we see this flashback here to when Dick and Kory were together kind of in season 1, but towards the end of this episode it becomes a lot more full circle with how they actually implement some new story there for Dick and his feelings towards Kory that he kept suppressed. And unfortunately, when Dick comes downstairs after finishing his recordings, we have Kory freaking hoovering the curtains. She's fully gone at this point. He tries to get her to listen to the tape about her grandfather, but that doesn't work, and that's because she needed to hear something a little bit more sentimental later on. Now, this is when Dick realizes the Raven's flying outside, so he knows where he needs to go now. And we got a moment where we have Carol, not really Kory, say, "Please don't leave me," and Dick's just like, "I would never leave you." So when Dick eventually gets to where Raven is, this is when the sheriff is there. A bunch of cops arrive. The radio plays a song dedicated to him and Carol, and this unfolds in a pretty cool fight scene. You guys know me. I love my vigilante action in this show. The choreography of Titans, for the most part, is absolutely spectacular. So I like how they show how much Dick Grayson isn't to be messed with when it comes to other people putting his family, chosen family, in danger. So he goes absolutely ham in this fight. While this fight was unfolding, we do have these two Church of Blood cult cops go to shoot Raven, and I'm not gonna lie, I did find it a bit convenient with how she was like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Trigon might not be happy. I am his daughter." Now, on one hand, these are very zealoty, culty, religious Church of Blood people, so I suppose there is an ounce of believability with how one of them might have been doubting, should we really do this? But at the same time, just the way it unfolded, the way it got to the point of when they shot each other, and then there was still one cop left trying to shoot her, and then Dick came in just in time. It was a bit plot convenient, but hey-ho. And so, as we're approaching the end of the episode, Dick and Raven come out, they see Megan's dad, they make their way to the radio station. Meanwhile, with Bernard and Tim, Bernard comes back and is just like, "You have a feeling, so we're going to go with this." So we have them set up a signal that can, I suppose, penetrate the kind of pocket dimension, if you will. We have William call out to his sister and dad through playing that song. Dick and Raven go into the radio tower, but we still have Kory in the car. So Kory in Carol mode picks up Dick Grayson's recorder, and we see the flashbacks we had earlier come full circle. She hears this extra dialogue that we never really knew the context of in season 1, from Dick explaining that after Kory walked out, all he could think about is that he wished he could tell her how he feels. He was so close, instead he let it walk away. So I wouldn't go as far as saying this is kind of retconning, but it's just implementing some narrative into an earlier season that I think is very believable for Dick, especially where he was in his life back then. If you consider things, he just met Kory, he had feelings for her, like the show obviously set that up. I mean, we saw the flashback scene again. He was on his arc to Nightwing, he was uniting all the Titans together. There was just a lot of other stuff going on, and to put it bluntly, Dick was very closed off, but that doesn't mean he didn't have feelings for her. So what they're doing here is tying the events of season 1, the inner thoughts and feelings Dick had back then, and to the point of where right now, granted that Dick hasn't exactly made it known to Kory, sure, there's been some stuff they've teased through visions and whatnot and some conversations, but he hasn't made it mega known, hey, let's get together, I have feelings for you. He's still in a much, much better place right now, and this is obviously the thing that Kory hears, or Carol, that brings her back to Kory mode. Now, with with Dick and Raven going into the radio tower. This is when he succumbs to the brainwashing. We have Rachel remind him of who she is, who he is, and he's just like, well, it's all about family. And then he starts screwing over the cult members who were, like, I guess, beating him before that. It's like he lost all knowledge of his combat mode, but as soon as he comes back to himself, freaking Fast and Furious style, he remembers everything and goes freaking ham. So they make their way to the center of the radio tower, and they see this, like, who is this dude? Like, who is he? He's just poor guy. Or maybe not poor guy, because maybe he was supporting it. Or maybe not. I don't know. But he was hooked up to these blood tubes. So Dick goes crazy at the tubes full of blood, which, you know, again, they seem to be infusing a bit of dark magic here with technology. And that's how this whole Cole's Folly situation even came about. And it seems to stop the music. We have William's sister and dad appear. The Hogwarts bubble shield starts to go down. And the town is more or less saved. That is until, of course, we have the sheriff pop up. But, of course, Kory, having come back to herself, freaking smacks him around the face. And we get a lovely moment between Dick and Kory. Dick mentions the painful memories that Kory used to come back to herself, but she says it wasn't the painful ones. And, you know, they just looked at each other for a minute. And I'm sure everybody was just like, yeah, boy. Now, Raven's like, we got a horn to catch, which is very, very true, albeit you won't be seeing that next week, because next week is the Gar episode. We'll get more back into this in episode 10, which reminds me, the actual episode leaves off on a scene in Metropolis, setting up episode 10 with Connor buying Sebastian a drink. He comes over all suited and booted, and he says, what are we toasting to? And Connor says, to the future. So all in all, guys, my overall thoughts on this is that I enjoyed these first 2 episodes, but just to repeat myself one more time, do forgive me. I just feel like if these episodes were released weekly over the course of a couple of weeks, I think people would have felt like things were dragging a little bit, but I do need to acknowledge that it did push the storyline along. The Church of Blood need the Horn of Trigon to enact that next step. We got big developments with Dick and Kory, of course. I'm sure there was a lot of DickKory fans just completely having a feast with that. Right at the end of episode 8, we of course have the tease of what's going on with Sebastian next and what's going on with Superboy next, and I really, really enjoy where that goes. So all in all, like, yeah, it was decent. It wasn't like necessarily crazy just yet, but it does indeed ramp up in the episodes to come. We do take a break next week, but for very, very good reasons, and I don't want to overhype it, but next week's episode is really decent. It is self-contained with Gar, a very introspective episode going over the lore of the Red, Gar's history, and all kinds of things like that. Of course, the Stargirl crossover, but as I teased in my no spoiler review, things get crazy, and if you think that's all there is to the episode, there's a lot of stuff, especially in the back half, to the point of where I really do think comic fans are gonna really, really dig those final 20 minutes. Plus, the whole episode, really, especially if you're like a Beast Boy fan and the Red and all kinds of things like that. So what did you guys think of this episode? Let me know down in the comments below. I want to see all of your thoughts, your theories, what you enjoyed most from episode 7 and 8. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate you hitting that like button. Do consider subscribing for more videos like this. Come along the journey of the Titans breakdowns week by week as we get into the finale. But until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see you fellow Titans in the next video. Goodbye.